Transform Your Body Fitness. I'm a physical therapist and a fitness coach. Now, what I have for you today, again, is to be able to bridge the gap between physical therapy and home fitness. There's a lot of people that have shoulder problems, all kinds, but what we're keying in on today is specifically what a lot of people have is diagnosed as a frozen shoulder or some sort of a rotator cuff injury. Now, a lot of times, first of all, people kind of say rotator cup. It's not a cup, it's a cuff, because it's made up of 4 different muscles that go around like a cuff of the scapula, but we'll get to that in a second. But what happens in these type of injuries very often and very commonly, when you go to raise your arm up, you kind of do a movement like this, and it kind of blocks you from being able to go up overhead. So the problem is, how do you stop this type of thing? Because this is the whole problem. Because if you could just go like this, anybody with a normal range of motion raises their arm up like that. So what happens is that there's something not right, and then that's why you're lifting your shoulder up a little bit, trying to, get the arm up, and what happens is that this is as far as the arm can go. So let me take you, I have to do anatomy so you understand where we're coming from. All right, here we go. Shoulder Anatomy 101. All right, now, this is the scapula. This is your arm, or the humerus. This is what we call the GH joint. And this is the combination of where the scapula is and the head of the humerus. And most of the movement when you're raising your arm up obviously comes from when the humerus rotates and goes up overhead. However, what you're not realizing is the scapula provides some movement in there to help it. See the shape of it? It's meant to rotate. And the arm will come up to a certain amount, and then the scapula rotates, and then the arm finishes going up. Now, there's some specifics behind this, but I'm not trying to get into specifics. But what happens with the frozen shoulder or the rotator cuff injury is that often when the arm raises up, what happens, instead of this rotating that direction, it moves up or doesn't move at all, because the anatomy, which you're not seeing the muscles, what makes up the rotator cuff, there's 3 muscles on the outside of the scapula, but on the inside, so you can see there, it's against the ribs. On the inside, what makes up the 4th muscle of the rotator cuff is underneath, and it's called the subscapularis. And it's an often untreated, undiagnosed type of a problem. What happens is that it gets tight. There's scar tissue, there's things that are happening that are causing it to not rotate in that direction. So what we need to do, when you're in physical therapy, often you'll see the physical therapist do a mobilization. They'll kind of grab this portion of the scapula and they're trying to pull it and they're trying to free it up. But now that you're not in physical therapy, because we're keying in on when you're at home and what to do for home fitness, if this is still a problem, I'm going to give you 2 exercises or 2 things that you can try to do to loosen this up, to improve the movement of the scapula so that you can improve your arm being able to raise up better. I'm going to turn this around now. All right. So, the first thing that happens, again, is that your arm, the scapula goes up instead of rotating. So what I would do, because again, this is what typically happens. So an easy fix might be, you take your hand and you're trying to guide the scapula to stay down instead of coming up. So see if you can at first try this. Keep your hand kind of at the top of the shoulder, and what you're doing as it's coming up and you're starting to feel the scapula pop up, you push it down. And sometimes that's just enough to encourage it to move over. So you push it down, you move it have your arm go up. But if that's not enough, then there's another way. But you need to grab like a broomstick or a regular stick. Now, before I do that, the subscapularis, because it's underneath the shoulder blade, part of the movement of what it does in the rotator cuff, it's an internal rotator. All right, so the other three muscles on the outside of the scapula, they're meant to help do this motion. So the subscapularis internally rotates. So in order to stretch that out, you're actually doing its opposite motion, and that would be this. So you grab your stick, all right, and then what you do is you take your hand, you keep it at shoulder level, then you take the stick and you put it behind, all right, keeping it at shoulder level, and you take the stick and you're rotating it down, but across, not down this way, down this way. And what that does, if you remember what I was just saying of how the scapula needs to rotate, this is encouraging it to push it down and to get it to rotate. So it's trying to free it up off of the rib cage. So that's 2 tips that you can try to do, because if you can improve the range of motion of the scapula, then what you're going to do is to be able to raise your arm up overhead pretty easily, and with a good, that it won't be choppy motion. It'll be nice, smooth motion. That's the key. The scapula needs to be freed up. You can try to do all these range of motion exercises all you want, but unless you move the scapula and free it up off of the rib cage, you're going to continue to have this kind of a motion. So take me up on my tip if you need to go back and look at the anatomy that I showed you so that you understand and review those 2 tips that I gave you. It's about bridging the gap between physical therapy and home fitness. It's about staying as healthy as you can for as long as you can. More tips to come. Have a great day, everybody.